He says, can anybody outside of Ohio beat Minnesota? And, of course, he's referring to the Buckeyes and the Falcons of Bowling Green, right? They're the Falcons, Don. Am I right?
I think that's right, yeah.
What are your thoughts on this? Is right now, you'd have to say it, and I'm not saying Purdue's out of it, but man, with what we saw yesterday, now you'd have to say it's probably a 3-team race, although we know things can change in a week's notice. But Minnesota, Wisconsin look really good right now. Like, they're coming into form. Of course, Iowa hopes they're there as well. But what do you think of Minnesota over Maryland?
Well, maybe Bowling Green got their game plan from Columbus. Maybe I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah.
I do think Purdue's problem, of course, they have to play both Ohio State in Columbus and Michigan State. So they have the tougher crossover schedule remaining. That'll be a problem, I would imagine. Certainly playing in Columbus will be a problem for anyone. And in that regard, you've got 3-1 Minnesota, 3-1 Iowa, 2-2 Wisconsin, 2-2 Purdue also, and everybody else has 3 or 4 losses. So you'd have to say that those 4 teams I've already mentioned that have either 1 loss or 2 losses are the most likely to be representing the West. So in that regard, this is a huge game this weekend because either we're going to pick up our second loss or Wisconsin's going to earn their third loss. And a third loss, of course, would pretty much doom you to failure, I think. So it is critical that we find a way to beat the Badgers. The nice thing about it, since the Badgers took care of Purdue, it means we literally do have our fate in our own hands. If we went out, then we're in Indianapolis. It's that simple. And it sounds simple enough, but of course it's not going to be easy to beat any of these next 5 opponents. Some of them on paper maybe look easy. Northwestern doesn't look very formidable at this point. And until yesterday, Illinois didn't look very formidable. But Illinois ran the ball well against Penn State, better than we did. And certainly that game there'll be a lot riding on that game if we can certainly keep dodging bullets in the loss column. So I think you have to realize that all 5 of these next games are potential stumbling blocks, and you have to approach it that way. Just have the mindset of a hurdler. You got to get over 5 hurdles. The only way to do that is to focus on the next hurdle one at a time.
Absolutely. And I know this is not a coaching mindset, Don. This is a fan's perspective. But when I look at this game coming up on Saturday, and this should not be a surprise to anybody, we called the Penn State game the biggest home game for an Iowa fan since potentially 1985. To me, this is the biggest game of the season. And obviously you can say, well, it's the biggest game of the season right now because it's the next game on the schedule. I know that's the coach's response to that, Don. But
right.
So much is riding on this, not only because Wisconsin, you brought it out, Wisconsin, you could also argue is very much in this race right now. You look at the fact that Iowa's coming off a devastating, I don't know if that's hyperbole, but a devastating loss to Purdue after beating Penn State. And then again, you look forward, and this is probably the toughest game left, Don. I'm not saying Minnesota's not going to be tough, but to win at Madison, Iowa has proven that that's a tall task, regardless of what type of team Wisconsin has. So I do believe it's the biggest game of the season. If they lose this game, I'd have to think that not only are they out of the playoff race completely, Don, but man, that doesn't take you out of the West race, but I think it's going to be very difficult to recover from.
You're saying if Wisconsin loses?
If Iowa loses if Iowa
loses
Wisconsin.
I don't even want to think about the tiebreaker possibilities. It is entirely possible that the West representative will have 2 conference losses. That's entirely possible. I hope not, because maybe the tiebreaker won't go our way. I'm not sure. It's probably too early to even worry about all the possibilities as far as a bunch of teams tying with 2 losses. So let's just focus on the possibility that we can finish with 1 loss. And of course, in the process of remaining at 1 loss, it would mean that we would give Wisconsin their 3rd loss. And I think that would effectively eliminate them. They could still play a huge spoiler role, but I don't think the Western representative is going to end up Indianapolis with a 3-loss season. Maybe so. Anything's possible. Maybe it'd be a 4-way tie with 3 losses. Wouldn't that be a mess? So let's just focus on finding a way to beat the Badgers. That'll be difficult to do. We joked about it before, Corey, but I am pleased that it's an 11 o'clock kick, because I know students well enough to know some of those students are going to miss the first quarter because they'd rather tailgate than be in their seats. And I do think it's very important against a team like Wisconsin that you start off and be in good shape. You don't want to play from behind against the Badgers because they're too good in their ability to shorten the game. That's a concern. So we need to get off to a good start. Be sure it's a one-score game, really ideally all the way through, unless we're playing from in front, of course, and then I don't mind it being a 2- and 3-score game.